Mommy, I have to tell you a secret. But Nana said I'm not allowed to. That's what my 4-year-old daughter said to me on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, her small hand tugging at mine as we walked down the pavement toward home. And in the space of the next 30 seconds, everything I'd spent 5 years rebuilding came crashing down around me. I just didn't know it yet. Let me take you back, because to understand why those words turned my blood to ice, you have to understand what came before them. You have to understand what it cost me to ever trust the woman my daughter calls Nana in the first place. 11 years ago, I packed up my entire life into 2 suitcases and moved to the other side of the world. I was young, I was hopelessly in love, and I was certain, the way you can only be certain when you're that age, that everything was going to work out exactly the way I imagined. The man I crossed an ocean for, I'll call him Daniel, was kind in a quiet, careful way that I later came to understand was the kindness of someone who had learned to make himself small. He was an only child, raised by a single mother after his father drifted out of the picture when he was still in nappies. His mom, I'll call her Marlene, had struggled for years, doing everything alone, scraping by, holding their little house together with her bare hands. And I genuinely admired her for that. In the beginning, I did. When Daniel was edging toward his preteen years, Marlene met a man. I'll call him Roy. On paper, Roy arrived like a rescue. Their house was practically falling down around them, close to being condemned by the council, and Roy had money, or at least the appearance of it. He paid to fix the roof. He covered the bills that had been piling up in a drawer Marlene was too frightened to open. For a little while, by all accounts, it must have felt like the tide had finally turned for them. But that's the thing about a rescue that comes with strings attached. You don't see the strings until they're already wrapped around your throat. Roy had a mental illness, and I want to be careful here because I have nothing against people who struggle with their mental health and do the work to manage it. That was never the issue. The issue was that Roy made a choice over and over again to stop. He'd stop going to therapy. He'd stop taking his medication. And every single time he did, it triggered these violent swings. Manic episodes where he'd burn through money like it was tissue paper, lie about everything, steal, cheat, disappear for days, then crash into black depressive spirals where he'd tear into everyone around him with words designed to wound. These cycles played out across Daniel's entire childhood and well into his adulthood, and they didn't soften with time. They got worse. They got sharper. They got more frequent. By the time I came into the picture, Roy had run his own business straight into the ground, and Marlene had quietly absorbed the wreckage. Over $80,000 of his debt sitting on her shoulders like a stone she couldn't put down. So that was the family I was marrying into. I knew some of it before I moved. I didn't know all of it. You never really know all of it until you're living inside it. When I first arrived in the country permanently, Daniel and I didn't have our own place yet. We needed to save, and the obvious answer, the cheap answer, the answer everyone agreed on, was that we'd stay with Marlene for a while. She was thrilled, genuinely, overflowingly thrilled. She had just thrown Roy out again for what she swore was the final time, the 1,000th final time, and she didn't want to be alone in that house. She wanted company. She wanted family. She wanted me. And I remember thinking, naively, that maybe this was a fresh start for all of us. Maybe I was going to be the daughter she never had. I was so unbelievably wrong, because within days of me unpacking my suitcases, Roy came crawling back. He showed up at the door with that hollow, practiced contrition, begging for somewhere to stay, begging for money, promising it would be different this time. And Marlene, the woman who had sworn up and down that he was gone for good, opened the door and let him walk right back in. I stood in the hallway watching it happen. This man I'd been warned about settling back into the house like he'd never left, and I felt the first cold finger of dread crawl up my spine. Here was my situation. Daniel worked away from home for long stretches. The nature of his job meant he could be gone for days, sometimes longer. I had just arrived in the country, and I didn't yet have my working rights sorted, so I couldn't get a job, couldn't earn, couldn't even fill my days with somewhere else to be. Which meant that, more often than not, it was just me and Roy. Alone. In that house. All day. And Roy noticed. I'm not going to dress up what happened next, because there's no dressing it up. It started small, the way these things always do, a lingering look standing too close, a comment that sat wrong in my stomach. Then it escalated. He started trying to walk in on me. The bathroom, the shower, my own bedroom, where I'd close the door and hear the handle turn anyway. He'd find reasons to be wherever I was. And he kept trying to force this grotesque parody of affection on me, pulling me into hugs I hadn't asked for, leaning in for kisses I twisted away from, acting wounded and offended when I made it clear I didn't want him anywhere near me. I felt like prey. I want to be honest about that because for years I couldn't say it out loud. I felt hunted in the one place I was supposed to be safe, in a country where I knew almost no one, with my husband hundreds of miles away, and a phone that suddenly felt very far from any kind of help. I started barricading my bedroom door at night. I started timing my showers for the brief windows when I knew Marlene would be home. I lost weight. I stopped sleeping. I lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks before I broke and told Daniel that I could not stay there one more day, that we had to leave, even if it meant draining every cent we'd saved for our own deposit. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. I couldn't find the words yet, but I told him enough. And to his enormous credit, he didn't argue. He didn't tell me I was overreacting. He said okay. We emptied our savings and we started renting a tiny, overpriced flat. And the first night, I slept there behind a door that locked and a man who wasn't on the other side of it. I cried with relief until my chest ached. It took me 2 years after that to fully put the boundary in place. 2 years to even understand what had been done to me, to stop minimizing it, to stop telling myself I was being dramatic. 2 years of therapy and quiet, gradual processing before I could finally say the words out loud. I never want to see Roy again. Not for a holiday. Not for a birthday. Not ever. And here's the part that still makes my heart ache for Daniel. When I said it, something unlocked in him too. He had spent his entire childhood watching his mother be cheated on, lied to, screamed at, financially gutted. He had absorbed years of Roy's verbal abuse himself. And he had never once, in his whole life, realized that he was allowed to say no. That he was allowed to stand up and refuse. Watching me draw a line gave him permission to draw his own. We sat at our little kitchen table and we agreed, together, we would see Marlene, but never her partner. Roy was finished. Done. Out of our lives for good. What would you have done in this situation? Because I'll tell you, the pushback we got for simply refusing to be in a room with a man who harassed me was staggering. Let me know in the comments. Marlene fought us on it. So did the rest of her family. We were called dramatic, unforgiving, cruel. We were told we were tearing the family apart over nothing. We were told that Roy was sick and we should have compassion, as if my compassion was supposed to outweigh my safety. There were arguments, tearful phone calls, long silences, relatives I'd never even properly met weighing in on my character. But Daniel held the line in a way I had never seen him hold anything. Every time someone came at us, he shut it down. Calm, firm, immovable. And the most darkly funny part of the whole thing, almost 2 years after we set that boundary, 2 years of being painted as the villains, the very same family members who'd condemned us quietly went no contact with Roy themselves. Turns out he'd burned every last one of them too. Suddenly we weren't so dramatic after all. Then about 5 years ago, the thing we'd stopped hoping for actually happened. Roy pulled one con too many, a massive cheating scandal layered on top of yet another theft of money she didn't have, and Marlene finally, genuinely, kicked him to the curb. For real this time. We didn't believe it at first. Why would we? We'd heard for real this time 100 times before. So we waited. We watched. Months passed, and he didn't come back. More months. And slowly, cautiously, with the kind of care you'd use handling something that had cut you before, we began to rebuild a relationship with her. And for a while, it was peaceful. It was genuinely, beautifully peaceful. About a year after Roy had gone, Daniel and I found out I was pregnant with our first child. A little girl. I'll call her Lily. Marlene was over the moon. She told me, again and again, that she wanted to be involved, that she wanted to help, that she knew my own family was scattered across the world, and she wanted to be the support I didn't have nearby. And I needed support, more than I could have known, because after Lily was born, I fell into a pit I didn't have a name for at first. Severe postpartum depression. It swallowed me whole. I'd lie awake at night with my heart slamming against my ribs, convinced I was failing my daughter, failing my husband, failing at the one thing I was supposed to be built for. Daniel was working away for huge chunks of that time, and the loneliness of it, the bone-deep exhaustion, nearly broke me. When Lily was 6 months old, I hit my breaking point. I won't go into the details of that night, except to say that it scared me badly enough to finally reach out for real help. I started medication for my anxiety. I went back into therapy, and right around then, Marlene started offering to come over and watch the baby overnight so that I could sleep. Actually sleep more than an hour at a stretch for the first time in half a year. I cannot overstate what a lifeline that was. Those nights of sleep stitched me back together piece by piece. They gave me enough ground to stand on to start climbing out. For the first time since I'd moved across the world, I felt like Marlene and I were genuinely family. Like the harm of those early years was something we'd survived together and left behind. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. We post new stories every day. Because I promise you, what comes next is the part that still keeps me up at night. After a while, Marlene started asking if she could watch Lily at her own house instead of coming to ours. And my immediate answer was no. A hard, instinctive no. Because her house was Roy's old hunting ground. And even with him long gone, every cell in my body recoiled from the idea of my daughter sleeping under that roof. But Marlene was patient. She was reassuring. And I, desperate for normalcy and rest and the simple, ordinary trust that other families seem to have, started to waver. So I did my due diligence. I want you to know that. I did not make this decision lightly. I asked other family members point blank whether Roy was truly out of the picture. I asked family friends. I asked everyone I could think of, gathering confirmation from every direction. And I asked Marlene herself directly to my face. I made her swear to me. I made her look me in the eyes and promise that Roy was gone for good and that she would never, under any circumstances, expose my child to that man. She swore it. She swore it like it was the easiest promise in the world to keep. And by then it had been nearly 3 years since anyone had seen him. The longest stretch in the entire history of their relationship. 3 years of silence. 3 years of him being nothing but a bad memory. So I said yes. God help me, I said yes. Which brings us back to that ordinary Tuesday. Back to the pavement and the sun and my daughter's small hand in mine. Mommy, I have to tell you a secret. But Nana said I'm not allowed to. I remember my whole body going still. Not because I suspected anything. I didn't, not in that first instant. But because we had talked, Lily and I, so many times about secrets. About how grown-ups should never ask a child to keep a secret from their mom or dad. About how a secret that makes you feel funny in your tummy is a secret you're always allowed to tell. I had drilled it into her gently, the way you teach a child to look both ways before crossing. And here she was, 4 years old, wrestling with the conflict between what Nana told her and what Mummy taught her. I crouched down to her level. I kept my voice as light and easy as I could manage. You know what, baby? You can always tell Mummy a secret. Always. Even if someone said not to, you'll never, ever be in trouble for telling me. And so she told me. She told me that a man had been staying at Nana's house. A man. And that sometimes this man gave her chocolates. I will never forget the feeling that moved through me in that moment. It wasn't hot, like I expected anger to be. It was cold. A deep, plunging, sickening cold, like the ground had opened up beneath the pavement and I was falling through it. A man. Chocolates. A secret Nana told her to keep. I didn't need to ask who. I already knew. Somewhere underneath the roaring in my ears. I already knew exactly who that man was. I don't fully remember the walk home. I remember holding Lily's hand a little too tightly and forcing my voice to stay sunny, so she wouldn't sense the storm tearing through me. I remember telling her she'd done such a good job telling Mummy, that she was so brave that she was never in trouble. I remember the moment I got her settled with a snack and a show, and I stepped into the next room, and I called Daniel with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I told him what Lily had said. There was a silence on the line so total that I thought the call had dropped. And then Daniel, my quiet, careful husband, The man who spent his whole life making himself small said in a voice I had never heard him use before, "I'm calling my mother right now." He confronted Marlene directly, and at first she tried to lie. Of course she did. She admitted, when pressed, that yes, Roy was back in her life. That had become undeniable. But the contact with Lily? She denied that flat out. Swore Lily was confused, swore it never happened, swore on everything. But Daniel kept pressing, kept laying out exactly what our daughter had described. A man staying at the house, chocolates, a secret she'd been told to keep, and the lie came apart her hands. Eventually, cornered, she admitted it. Yes, they had met. Roy and our daughter had been in the same house, the same room. She insisted it was only once. Only one time. And I'm telling you with everything in me, I do not believe that for a second. You don't coach a 4-year-old to keep a secret over a single accidental encounter. You coach a child to keep a secret when it's a pattern you're terrified of being caught for. The betrayal didn't just wound me. It detonated something inside both of us. Because think about what she actually did. She didn't just break a promise. She didn't just let Roy back in. She took my child, the child I had agonized over, the child I had finally, after 3 years and 100 reassurances, trusted her with, and she placed her in the presence of the man who had hunted me through that very house. And then, knowing exactly how we would feel, she taught my daughter to lie to me about it. She recruited a 4-year-old into a conspiracy of silence against her own parents. That is the part one cannot get past. That is the part that wakes me at 3 in the morning with my heart pounding. Daniel put his foot down the instant the truth was out. He cut contact completely. No more visits. No more overnight stays. No access to Lily. No access to him. Nothing. And Marlene, this is the part that tells you everything. Marlene did not respond with horror at what she'd done. She didn't fall to pieces with guilt. She responded with hurt. Her hurt. She genuinely could not understand why she was being cut off, why she couldn't see her son or her granddaughter, why we were being so cruel to her. The harm she'd done to us evaporated in her mind, and all that was left was her own wounded feelings. We have not received a single apology. Not one. What we've received instead is a relentless campaign of excuses, and every single one of them lands like a slap. She's lonely, she says, as if loneliness is a currency that buys back our daughter's safety. Roy is finally on a good combination of medication now, she says, and he's really trying to make up for the mistakes he caused her, as if his trying is worth more than my child's protection. And then there's the one that turns my stomach the most. That Roy is in line for a large inheritance, and that because Marlene has had such a hard life, she deserves some financial stability, and he can provide it. There it is. The truth under all the excuses. She traded my daughter's safety, my husband's trust, and my hard-won peace for the promise of money. Daniel is spiraling. I watch it happen a little more each day, and I don't know how to stop it. This is his mother, the woman he defended for years, the woman he finally let himself rebuild a bond with, the woman he chose to believe when she swore she'd protect his child. And she looked him in the eye, took everything he'd given her, and threw it away for an inheritance and a man who destroyed both their lives. Every single day, there's a new text from her, guilt trip after guilt trip, designed with surgical precision to make him feel like the monster. You're abandoning your mother. You're so cruel. How can you do this to me? And I watch my husband, this gentle man who took so many years to learn he was allowed to say no, get worn down a little further with every message. It's breaking him. It's breaking him right in front of me, and I am terrified of what it's doing to him. Drop a comment below. Do you think they made the right call cutting her off completely? Because some days even I question whether there's any version of this where we hold a door open. And then I remember the chocolates and the secret, and I know there isn't. And here is the cruelest piece of timing in the entire nightmare. I am 37 weeks pregnant. 37 weeks. Our second child is due any day now. And Marlene, the woman we just cut out of our lives, was the one who was supposed to watch Lily when I went into labor. She was the plan. The only plan. Because my own family is on the other side of the world, and in 11 years she had become, by default, the entire support system we had in this country. So now, days away from giving birth, with my body heavy and aching and my nerves stretched to breaking, I am scrambling. Scrambling to find someone, anyone, to care for my daughter when the contractions start. Scrambling to hold my husband together as he comes apart. And in the rare, quiet moments, scrambling to research what it would actually take to pack up our whole life and move my family back to my home country, where at least we'd have people. Real people. People who would never, ever do what she did. The rage I feel is astronomical. I don't have a better word for it. It sits in my chest like something molten. I'm angry that she let him back in after everything. I'm angry that she exposed my child to him. But more than anything, I am angry that she tried to make my daughter lie for her, that she looked at a trusting 4-year-old and saw an accomplice. And underneath all that rage, there's something worse. Shame. Deep, corrosive shame. Because I let her in. I did my checks, I asked my questions, I made her swear, and I still let her in. I trusted her with the most precious thing in my world, and a quiet voice in the back of my head keeps whispering that I should have known better, that a good mother would have known better. I sat on the edge of the bathtub the night it all came out, long after Lily was asleep, and I cried in a way I hadn't cried since those early postpartum nights. Daniel found me there. He sat down on the cold tile beside me. This man who works away so much, who carries the weight of his whole childhood in the careful way he moves through the world, and he put his arm around me. Neither of us said anything for a long time. There wasn't anything to say that would fix it. Finally, he just whispered, "It's not your fault. You did everything right. She's the one who lied." And I wanted so badly to believe him. I'm still trying to. In the days since, I've found myself going back over every choice, every conversation, looking for the moment I could have done something differently. Was it when I said yes to the overnight stays at her house? Was it years earlier, when I let myself believe she had truly changed? Or was the mistake simply trusting it all? Letting myself hope that a family that had hurt me once could ever be safe? I don't have a clean answer. I'm not sure there is one. The truth I keep circling back to is that I made the best decision I could with the information I had, and she made a choice to betray it. Those are two different things, even if they led to the same wreckage. I've started making lists because lists are the only thing that make me feel like I have any control. Lists of people to call about childcare for the birth. Lists of questions to research about international moves with young children. Lists of the things I need to say to Lily, gently, to make sure she understands that telling me the secret was the right thing, that she is not in trouble, that she did something brave, that I will always, always believe her. Because if there's one thing I refuse to let this take from her, it's the knowledge that she can come to me with anything, that a grown-up's secret will never be heavier than her own safety. She broke the silence Marlene tried to wrap around her, and she did it because of all those quiet conversations we'd had. That, at least, is something I got right. People talk about postpartum like the danger ends once the baby's here and you've found your footing. They don't tell you that the ground can open up again years later, on an ordinary afternoon, on an ordinary pavement, with 5 words from a 4-year-old. They don't tell you that the people who hurt you can wear the face of the person who saved you. Marlene was both, in the end. She was the lifeline that pulled me out of that pit, and she was the hand that shoved me back toward the edge. Both things are true, and holding them at the same time is its own special kind of grief. I keep thinking about the chocolates of all things. Such a small, sweet, ordinary thing. A man giving a little girl chocolates. On its own, it would be nothing. A treat from a relative. But layered over everything that man is everything he did in that house. Everything Marlene swore he would never come near. Those chocolates become something monstrous. They were a bribe. They were the bait on the hook of a secret. He was teaching my daughter that he was a source of sweetness, that he was safe, that he was someone worth keeping secrets for. And she's 4. She doesn't have the armor to see through that. That's what we were supposed to be there for. That's what Marlene swore she would be there for. I haven't slept properly since it happened. I lie awake with the baby kicking inside me, one hand on my belly, and I try to imagine what the next few weeks look like. A birth with no familiar hands to leave my eldest with. A newborn coming home to a household already cracked down the middle. A husband I'm watching grieve a living mother. And somewhere out there, A phone buzzing with another message engineered to make him feel like the villain in a story where he's the only one who actually protected our children. I delete some of them before he sees, when I can. I know I shouldn't. I know they're his to deal with. But I can't stand to watch them chip away at him one more time. The hardest part, if I'm honest, isn't even the logistics or the rage. It's the loneliness of it. Because for 11 years, the story I told myself about moving across the world was that I'd be all right, that I'd build a new family here, that I wasn't really alone. And now, days from bringing a new life into that family, I've had to look squarely at the fact that the safety net I thought I had was never really there. It was conditional. It could be traded away for an inheritance and a lonely woman's wishful thinking. So I'm sitting here at 37 weeks, more isolated than I've felt since the day I first stepped off that plane, trying to figure out how to build something real out of the rubble. And yet, there's a strange, stubborn clarity underneath all of it too. Because for all the pain, I know that we did the right thing. The instant Lily told me that secret, the instant we knew the truth, there was never any real choice to make. You protect your children. You protect them even when it costs you your only support. You protect them even when it breaks your husband's heart. You protect them even when the world calls you cruel and the guilt trip texts come like clockwork. That's the whole job. Everything else is negotiable. That isn't. So here's where I've landed, at least for tonight. I don't know yet whether we'll move across the world again. I don't know who's going to hold my hand through this birth or watch my daughter when the time comes. I don't know if Daniel will ever fully recover from what his mother chose. And I don't know how long it will take me to stop replaying that conversation on the pavement or to stop feeling the cold drop in my stomach every time I think of the word secret. What I do know is this. My daughter trusted me enough to break a silence she'd been told to keep. My husband chose his children over his own mother. And I chose to believe a 4-year-old over a woman who swore on everything she had. If the cost of keeping my children safe is being the villain in Marlene's story, then I'll be the villain. I'll be the cruel daughter-in-law, the unforgiving wife, the one who tore the family apart. I've been called all of it before, years ago, for the very same reason, for refusing to stay in a room with a man who frightened me. They were wrong then, and the whole family eventually came around to admit it. Maybe they will again. Maybe they never will. It doesn't change what I have to do. Trust, I've learned, isn't a thing you grant once and then never have to think about again. It's a thing that has to be earned and re-earned, protected and watched. And the moment someone proves they'll trade it for something cheaper, you have to be willing to take it back. No matter who they are, no matter what they once meant to you, no matter how much it costs. The people who deserve to be near your children are the ones who would never make you choose between their feelings and your child's safety. The day Marlene made that choice for me, she answered every question I'd ever have about whether she belonged in our lives. And the secret my daughter couldn't keep, it didn't destroy my family. It saved it. It just took me a little while, sitting on that cold bathroom floor, to understand which one it really was. Guys, we are inching toward 1,000 subscribers on this channel. If you're not subscribed, please consider hitting subscribe. It really helps us hit that 1,000 milestone. Thanks for sticking around.